The wind tore through the narrow streets of northern Detroit, howling like a living thing. It was the kind of winter night that made even the hardiest souls retreat indoors. But for Sam Briggs, 61, a former Marine now living on the streets, there was no warmth waiting for him. Hunched beneath the crumbling overhang of an abandoned pawn shop, Sam clutched a styrofoam cup of lukewarm vegetable stew he'd managed to get from a church shelter earlier that day. It wasn't much, but it was all he had. Sam's boots were worn thin, his gloves fingerless, and his blanket barely thick enough to stop the biting wind. Every breath he exhaled turned into mist before disappearing into the dark. He had survived the deserts of Iraq, but this cold, this relentless, gnawing cold, felt like a slower kind of battle. Just as he raised the cup to his lips, a sound cut through the wind. A faint whimper. He stiffened, lowering the cup, listening. There it was again, a soft, strained cry coming from the alley behind him. Sam turned and squinted into the shadows. Out of a mound of trash bags limped a German shepherd, barely more than a skeleton wrapped in fur. One of its back legs dragged uselessly behind it, blood staining the snow beneath it. Its coat was soaked, patchy, and matted with slush. But what struck Sam were its eyes, clouded, hollow, yet pleading. Without a word, he slowly placed the cup of stew in the snow before the animal. "You need it more than I do," he whispered, voice rough with cold and memory. The dog inched forward, trembling, and began to lap at the soup. In that moment, something inside Sam stirred, something he thought the streets had long since frozen away. The cold was a thief, and by midnight it had stolen nearly everything from Sam Briggs. His warmth, his strength, and finally, his consciousness. His back pressed against the graffiti-tagged wall of the old pawn shop, he slumped sideways, the thin blanket slipping from his shoulders. His fingers, once clinging to hope in the form of a soup cup, now curled uselessly against the frozen concrete. His breath had grown shallow, nearly invisible in the frigid air. He didn't cry out. There was no one to hear him. Beside him, the injured German shepherd had finished the last of the soup, every last drop licked from the cup. Despite the pain in its leg and the frost biting through its ragged fur, the dog dragged itself closer to the motionless man. With effort, it curled its frail, battered body against Sam's chest, resting its head just below his chin. Its ribs heaved with shallow breath, but it did not move again. There, in that alley blanketed by snow and forgotten by most of the world, man and dog leaned into each other, two broken souls bound not by words, but by something deeper, survival, sacrifice, and a kind of quiet understanding. The morning light was slow to pierce the storm. Snowdrifts had swallowed sidewalks and the city still slept. But by chance Eli Turner, a 31-year-old delivery driver running behind schedule, turned down that very alley, hoping to find a shortcut to the main road. His headlights cut through the haze, and for a brief moment, the beam caught something unusual. Two shapes half buried in the snow. He slammed on the brakes and jumped out of the truck, boots crunching through the frost. His breath caught as he knelt beside them. A man clearly unconscious, his lips tinged blue, skin ashen. And a dog, thin as bone, pressed against him, unmoving but alive. The dog's body had shielded the man all night, its own fur now stiff with frost. "Oh my God," Eli muttered, fumbling for his phone. Hang on," he called 911 with shaking fingers, giving the dispatcher their location as he tried to brush snow from Sam's face. "He's barely breathing," he said into the phone. But the dog's still with him. Within minutes, the wail of an approaching ambulance echoed through the streets. EMTs worked fast, wrapping Sam in thermal blankets, checking his vitals and placing him on a stretcher. The shepherd whimpered softly as they lifted the man away, then tried to stand, only to stumble, its wounded leg collapsing beneath it. One paramedic paused. "We can't leave it." "Not after what it just did," another said. Together, they carried both man and dog into the back of the ambulance. Later that day, Sam stirred awake beneath a thin hospital blanket, his body sore and burning. But when he turned his head and saw the dog resting at his side, bandaged, breathing, watching, he felt the first warmth he'd known in years. "I didn't save you," he rasped. "You saved me." The fluorescent lights of the aid center buzzed overhead, sterile and too bright, but Sam Briggs didn't care. He lay wrapped in a scratchy hospital blanket on a narrow cot, the warmth of the building a distant comfort compared to the soft, steady breath he felt at his side. Duke, the battered German shepherd, lay curled beside the cot, head resting on the linoleum floor, eyes barely open but unwavering. The staff had tried to move him twice, but each time the dog had whimpered, stiffened, and inched closer until they gave up. He wasn't going anywhere. A nurse stepped in quietly, holding a clipboard and a gentle smile. "We can arrange to have the dog transferred to a nearby shelter," she said kindly. "They'll take good care of him, I promise." Sam looked down at Duke's matted fur, the bandaged leg, the thin ribs still visible through his coat. The dog had survived the storm. He'd kept Sam alive when the cold almost claimed him. He had nothing, no home, no money, barely a future, but he knew one thing with absolute certainty. "No," Sam rasped, voice dry. "He stays." The nurse hesitated. "Are you sure? You'll be discharged soon. We don't have placement options for both of you." Sam's eyes didn't move from the dog. "He didn't leave me. I won't leave him." The words hung in the room like a vow. The nurse gave a slow, understanding nod and walked away. 3 days later, Sam and Duke stepped out of the aid center into the freezing wind, a mismatched pair carrying nothing but each other. The city hadn't changed, still cold, still indifferent, but something inside Sam had. He wasn't alone anymore. At night, they found shelter where they could. Sometimes under the eaves of an old church, other nights in a quiet bus stop near the lake. Sam would unroll his blanket and let Duke curl against him. Sometimes, when the wind howled too loud and the hunger bit too deep, Sam would hum softly under his breath, and Duke would press closer as if to say, "We're still here." By day they scavenged. Sam picked through alley bins behind bakeries for scraps. A half-eaten roll. A broken muffin. He fed Duke first, always. Once, he bought a can of dog food with his last handful of coins while he drank nothing but tap water from a gas station sink. When strangers dropped change in his cup, he'd nod, sometimes smile. He never asked for more. One evening, as Sam tucked his coat tighter around himself and Duke nestled into his side, a passerby paused. She looked down at them, at the way Duke's head rested gently on Sam's thigh, at the quiet loyalty between them. "You two look like old friends," she said softly. Sam glanced up. His face was tired, his beard wild, but his voice was clear. "He saved my life," he said simply. "I'm just trying to return the favor." And in that frozen corner of the city, beneath flickering street lamps and falling snow, a man who'd lost everything and a dog left for dead had found something more valuable than shelter or food, an unbreakable bond that no storm could take away. The snow had grown crusted and gray, piled in uneven mounds along the corners of the neglected park. Sam Briggs and Duke had taken refuge beneath a worn wooden bench near the frozen fountain. Just another night in the endless cold. Sam's fingers were numb despite the gloves he'd found in a donation box 2 days ago. His stomach ached with hunger, but all he had were a few coins jingling in his pocket. Barely enough for stale bread, maybe. Duke lay curled beside him, his ribs less visible now but still thin, his wounded legs stiff when the temperature dropped. Sam was dozing when the first kick landed. A sharp pain struck his side. He gasped, curling instinctively. "Get up, old man," growled a voice above him. He looked up into the shadows of 3 young men, hoods up, eyes hard, one of them waving a rusted pocket knife. "We saw you digging cans earlier," the leader sneered. "Hand over what you got." Sam gritted his teeth and pulled his bag close, not for the coins, but for dignity. "It's not worth anything," he muttered. "Then it won't matter if we take it." Before the thug could lunge again, a low growl sliced through the air. The dog rose slowly, shaking, his injured leg barely holding weight, but the fire in his eyes was fierce. He stepped forward, barking once, sharp, defiant. The attackers flinched. "That thing's crazy," one spat. The leader didn't hesitate. He lunged, slashing downward. The blade caught Duke's shoulder, just a nick, but enough to draw blood. Duke didn't back down. With all the strength he had, the dog lunged. His teeth clamped onto the attacker's sleeve, his weight pulling the man off balance. Chaos erupted, shouts, cursing, scrambling feet. The thugs fled into the darkness, leaving only the blood-slicked snow behind. Sam dropped to his knees beside Duke, heart hammering. "You stubborn, brave idiot," he whispered, pulling the dog into his arms. Duke whimpered but wagged his tail, resting his head against Sam's chest. Tears stung Sam's eyes, not just from fear but guilt. "You got hurt, for me." As Duke trembled against him, the truth struck like lightning. This dog had risked his life again for a man who could barely feed him, barely keep him warm. Sam couldn't live like this anymore. Duke deserved more. They both did. That night Sam made a decision. At dawn, while Duke limped beside him, Sam walked the icy streets with a new purpose. He stopped at stores, restaurants, gas stations, anywhere with a sign in the window. "I'm a veteran," he'd say. "I just need a chance. I'll mop floors, shovel snow. I'll do anything." Rejections came fast. Some turned away. Others mumbled sorry without eye contact. But he kept going. Because now it wasn't just survival. It was for Duke. For the dog who had nothing yet gave everything. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows over the alley behind Millie's diner, where Sam knelt beside a dented recycling bin, sorting cans with his gloved fingers. His breath curled in the frigid air, his body aching from days of hunger and nights of restless sleep. Beside him, Duke sat patiently, eyes watchful, tail gently brushing the ground with every shift of wind. Sam muttered to himself as he counted the few coins he'd collected. Not even enough for a cup of coffee. Then behind him a deep voice broke the quiet. That dog just saluted. Sam turned quickly, startled. A man stood leaning against the diner's back door, tall, silver-haired, clean-cut even in an old army coat. His eyes were sharp but not unkind. "Excuse me?" Sam asked. "I said," he saluted. The man stepped closer, kneeling slowly to Duke's level. "I trained dogs for the military for 15 years. That move he just made, back straight, head high, paw raised, it's standard protocol. Where'd you find him?" Sam hesitated. "Few months back, during a storm. Thought he wouldn't make it." The man's expression softened. "Name's Tom Bradley. Retired Master Sergeant. I used to run drills with a German Shepherd named Rex. He took shrapnel for me in Fallujah. Died saving my life." He looked at Duke again, something flickering in his eyes. "There's something in him. Same instincts. Same fire." Sam gave a weary chuckle. "Yeah, well, he saved my life too. Twice." Tom stood, rubbing the back of his neck. "You got a place to stay?" Sam looked away. "Not really." Tom nodded slowly. "I own this diner. I need a night watchman. Got a spare room upstairs, nothing fancy. But it's warm. It's yours if you want it. Dog stays too." Sam blinked. "Why?" Tom smiled. "Because you didn't give up. And because he didn't either." The silence stretched. Then Sam spoke, voice raw. "Thank you. I don't know what to say. Just say yes." He did. That night, for the first time in years, Sam and Duke slept in warmth. The room was small, with peeling paint and a rattling heater, but to them it was a palace. Duke curled up at the foot of a real bed, his tail thumping in contentment. Sam sat on the edge, staring out the tiny window, the lights of the diner below glowing like a beacon. He whispered to the dog, voice thick with emotion, "You didn't just survive, Duke. You brought me back with you." And in the stillness, Duke lifted his head and rested it on Sam's knee as if to say, "We did this together." Hope had returned, not loud, not sudden, but in the quiet, steady beat of a second chance. It was a quiet Thursday evening at Millie's diner, the kind where the only sounds were the soft clatter of dishes in the back and the low hum of the old jukebox playing a forgotten tune. Sam wiped down the counter, Duke resting at his usual spot near the back exit, his eyes alert even in stillness. The last few weeks had brought something close to peace, warm beds, full meals, safety. But fate, as always, had other plans. The bell above the diner's door jingled, but this time it wasn't a late-night regular. 3 masked men stormed in, shouting and brandishing pistols. "Hands up." On the ground. "Nobody move." The lone waitress screamed, diving behind the counter. Sam froze as one of the men shoved him back against the wall, pressing the cold muzzle of a gun into his temple. Duke didn't bark. He didn't move. He simply watched, body tense, eyes fixed on the scene. Then, when the robbers turned their backs to focus on the register, Duke slipped silently out the back door like a ghost in the snow. He ran. Through dark alleys, across icy sidewalks, dodging cars and strangers alike. His paws pounded against frozen pavement, the cold biting through his pads, but he didn't stop. The police station sat nearly 2 miles away, but distance meant nothing to Duke. At the front doors of the station, Duke burst in, soaked and panting, barking wildly. Officers jumped from their chairs, startled. "What the hell? Whose dog is this?" One officer, a sergeant named Riley, knelt down. "Wait, this is the mutt from the diner story." Duke barked again and tugged at Riley's pant leg, eyes pleading. It wasn't random. Riley grabbed his gear. "Something's wrong. Let's move." Within minutes, flashing lights lit up the snowy street outside Millie's diner. As the robbers began stuffing bills into their bags, the sound of sirens screeched into the night. The front door burst open. "Drop it. Hands up." The robbers turned to flee but were met with drawn weapons and officers swarming in. One lunged at Sam. Duke was faster. He charged through the open door, teeth bared, throwing the man off balance just as he raised a crowbar. Officers tackled the rest. Within seconds it was over. Sam dropped to his knees, shaking. Duke bounded to his side, nuzzling his chest. "You did it again," Sam whispered, voice cracking. "You saved me, again." News of the hero dog spread like wildfire. By morning, local news vans lined the street outside the diner. Interviews, headlines, camera flashes. Veteran and rescue dog foil robbery, the news ticker read. Duke, Chicago's four-legged hero. 2 weeks later, Sam stood at City Hall in a borrowed suit, Duke beside him in a shiny new collar. The mayor pinned a small medal to the dog's chest and handed Sam a certificate of honor. "Not all heroes walk on two legs," she said. The crowd clapped. Sam looked down at Duke, pride swelling in his chest. "You're not just my dog," he whispered. "You're this city's guardian now." And Duke, tail wagging, eyes steady, stood tall like he always had. Months had passed since the night Duke saved Sam's life, twice. Life on the second floor above Millie's diner had taken on a rhythm, a kind of peaceful routine that once seemed impossible. Every evening, Sam Harper, the once-forgotten veteran who used to sleep in alleys, stood by the diner's glass door, uniform tidy, posture straight, with Duke at his side, watchful, loyal, content. Their little apartment wasn't fancy. It had creaky floors, one drafty window, and a space heater that rattled when it kicked on. But to Sam it was a palace. A real home. And Duke? He ruled it like the quiet guardian he was, his eyes never far from Sam, his tail always thumping gently whenever Sam came into the room. The bond between them, born from hunger, hardship, and one small act of kindness, had grown into something unbreakable. Sometimes, late at night after closing, Sam would sit on the old couch and look down at Duke sprawled out across the floor, his once matted coat now clean and glossy. He'd whisper, "You didn't just take my soup that night, buddy. You gave me a reason to live." Their story, shared across news outlets and social media, had touched thousands. Letters still arrived at the diner, from fellow veterans, dog lovers, people struggling to believe they mattered. And every time Sam read one, he remembered that cold alley, that simple decision to put someone, or something, before himself. The world can be harsh, unpredictable. So many walk past those in need, both human and animal, without a second glance. But Sam's story, and Duke's, reminded people of something deeper, that love doesn't always come from comfort, and that salvation often begins with the smallest gesture. One shared bowl of soup changed 2 lives. So if you ever find yourself wondering whether kindness makes a difference, remember this. It might not change the world all at once, but for one soul in one moment it could mean everything. Give without expecting. Love without question. And when the opportunity for a second chance comes, take it. Because miracles don't always arrive with fanfare. Sometimes they come on 4 legs with a scar and a heart braver than most.